Welcome to Yankee Stadium.
To welcome Aaron not only back to the Bronx, but to welcome Aaron back to the Bronx as the 16th captain of this great organization, the New York Yankees. An honor and a position which he greatly deserves.
Good morning, everybody. Today is December 29th, 2022. The year is almost over, and there's not a lot going on in baseball right now. But the Yankees did make one minor trade. They moved Luetge, whom had previously been designated for assignment, to the Atlanta Braves for a couple of minor leaguers. Now, all I know about these guys that we picked up is what I've read on the various message boards, but it sounds like the Yankees are focusing a lot on depth in the minor leagues right now, which seems appropriate given the number of injuries they've had in recent years. So for this video, I'm going to do a little bit of a year-end talk with you guys and gals, and I'm going to forego the typical bells and whistles of my presentation and just let the player highlights run for a while. This is something I'm going to do more often this year, more long-form conversation with just some filler in the background so you guys can sit and listen. We're going to talk about the shortstop battle, Volpe and Peraza. We're going to talk a little bit about the gaping hole in left field and whether or not Aaron Hicks is really the Yankees' plan. I still don't think that he is. I think that there's somebody out there that they can get. And also, we're going to talk about what type of content you can expect from this channel in 2023. I've got some really fun things to announce that you guys can expect going forward. Sorry that I haven't put out as much content lately. This is the time of the year where I take advantage of the dip in regular baseball traffic on YouTube to get some work done behind the scenes and to prepare for next season. But I assure you that I have been following along, and I am ready to go should news break. There's one thing that concerns me, however, and that's the uptick in clickbait among my fellow content creators. When news is slow, a lot of content creators just make stuff up. And I feel that that's something that needs to be addressed. So that's what I want to start off with in this video. As content creators, it's our responsibility to provide honest and authentic content to our audience. I try to make it a point to be as honest as I can with my audience without, giving away anything too personal. Clickbait headlines and sensationalized content may attract short-term views, but they ultimately erode our credibility and trust with our audience as creators. And in the long run, credibility and trust is way, way more important than any one video getting a lot of views. By consistently delivering high quality and genuine content, we as content creators can establish ourselves as trusted sources of information in this industry. Furthermore, short-term views gained through clickbait tactics are not sustainable, and it's not a way to grow your audience beyond a certain point. While it may lead to a temporary spike in viewership, it's ultimately a disservice to the audience and does not foster a healthy or engaged community or discussion. Therefore, my own philosophy as a content creator is to prioritize honesty and authenticity in my work. I try not to sensationalize ideas or headlines or do anything that would ultimately undermine my personal credibility or the integrity of NYY Recaps, which I've worked hard to build. As someone who's not a journalist, admittedly so, and has limited access to sources, I find that my approach for creating content is centered around reacting to the news and occasionally addressing the credible rumors that seem logical to me. While I recognize that this approach might not work for everybody, and not everybody shares my ethics or my philosophy, I believe that it's the most effective approach for my personal channel. What frustrates me, though, is when content creators try to one-up journalists by presenting rumors as if they are facts. This not only undermines the credibility of the journalists, but it also risks misleading the audience and causing confusion among the Yankees community. I try to be mindful of this in my own content creation and focus on providing thoughtful analysis and reactions rather than trying to break news or present unverified information as fact. I always try and say, take this with a grain of salt. I always try and say, use your own critical thinking. And this approach allows me to maintain my own integrity and not say something that may not end up being true in the long run. But there's content creators out there that are posting every rumor as if it's fact, just for short-term viewership, and claiming deals are done when they're not, claiming they have sources that they clearly do not have or have not vetted, and making claims that are not only illogical but downright ridiculous, such as Mike Trout asking to be traded to the Yankees. There's simply no way that Mike Trout is going to be traded to the Yankees. Mike Trout being traded to the Yankees is about as likely as Mike Trout teleporting to the Yankees, or Josh Donaldson becoming a likable person. It's just not going to happen. And to suggest otherwise for clicks is, in my opinion, unethical. So for those of you who are getting fed up with the clickbait, and for those of you who may not be able to tell what clickbait is, I wanted to provide some best practices that I use when I'm reading anything that happens to be out there in the baseballosphere. 1. Consider the source of the rumor. Is the person or the organization that's putting the rumor out there known for reliability and credibility? Or do they seem like they're trying to break news without much of a following? Do they have a track record of providing accurate information in the past? Or do they kind of just throw a lot of stuff out there and occasionally something sticks? Check multiple sources. Don't rely on just one source of information. Look for confirmation or denial of rumors from other credible baseball writers like Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal. 3. Look for supporting evidence. Does the rumor have any evidence to support it, such as quotes from named baseball executives? If not, there's a good chance that it's only smoke and that there's no real fire there. Evaluate the plausibility. Does the rumor make sense given what we already know? Mike Trout makes a ton of money and has a bad back, and the Yankees have a very high payroll already. It simply lacks credibility that the Yankees would be considering Mike Trout, who's got a ton of injury problems, got a bad back, and an enormous contract. If you were Brian Cashman, would you want another huge contract for a guy who's always injured, no matter what their talent level is? I doubt it. Just knowing what we know about Brian Cashman is he seems to be overly cautious in recent years. Consider the motivations of the source. How is the person who's putting this rumor out there benefiting from it? And would it stand up to scrutiny if they were on, let's say, the Yes Hot Stove show, being interviewed about it by Michael Kay and John Flaherty? Do you really think that Michael Kay is going to get on his show and quote the YouTuber, and I hate to call people out, Anzo, who's clearly an uninformed kid who's trying to, get a jump on the coattails of the rest of us who's put in the work by making up rumors? I doubt he would take Anzo seriously, just like you shouldn't and just like I don't. Be cautious of sensationalized and emotional language and thumbnails. Rumors that are presented as an overly dramatic or in an overly emotional way are more likely to be sensationalized or biased. And use your own critical thinking skills. Don't blindly accept or reject a rumor, but rather use your own judgment and critical thinking skills to evaluate the credibility and plausibility of the information. Does it make sense for Mike Trout to come to the Yankees? No, it doesn't. It just doesn't. And it's not going to happen. So I've said my piece about clickbait. You won't see clickbait coming from my channel. If I react to a rumor, it's because I believe it to be credible. And that's all I have to say about that. All right, so let's move on to shortstop. We got news from Michael Kay that Anthony Volpe has been told that he's got a chance to begin the season as the Yankees' opening day shortstop. Now, Steinbrenner had said that earlier in the winter that the kids, Volpe and Peraza, were going to battle it out for shortstop. And I 100% am in favor of that. I think it'll be fun to watch. What we saw of Peraza last year was that he's unbelievable defensively. He's got an unbelievable release. He gets rid of the ball very quick. He's got a lot of range. He was in the 90th percentile of sprint speed. He made a lot of contact. Now, he made a lot of soft contact, but he did make a lot of contact. He showed off some power in the minor leagues, and I think he's going to be a good player, and I think, as Paul O'Neill suggested, he could be a 2020 guy. Anthony Volpe got off to a tough start last year. I think he hit about 200 for the first 2 months, but the rest of the way, he hit in the 280s. He showed off power. He showed off speed. He had 50 stolen bases. He hits the ball well to right field, which will translate at Yankee Stadium. He's a New York guy, grew up in the area, Yankees fan, and he's apparently working hard already to try and win this position, and that's what you want. You want the competition. You want the spirit of somebody who wants to win this job. And I think that you really can't go wrong with infusing a little bit of young talent in this roster. I feel like once guys start to get paid at the level that a lot of Yankees players get paid, it's tough to find that extra motivation, and it's good to mix in some young guys who are still trying to make it. You know, there's just a certain level of hustle, of playing hard. Everything's new to them. The fan reactions, they feed off of them a bit more because they're not as used to it. Everybody wants to win a World Series. Young guys, old guys. But the younger guys don't realize how hard it is a lot of times yet. You know? Derek Jeter, when he first came up, won 4 World Series in his first 5 years, and then only won 1 World Series the rest of the way. It's not something that's easy to do. I've heard Jeter say things such as, and this is not an exact quote, that he wishes he had appreciated that time more because he just assumed that they would always be competing for the World Series. But really, after those first 5 years, they didn't make it back very often. And it was, you know, really tough to get to the point where you lose in the playoffs. And he wished that he had savored those early championship runs a little bit more. Personally, I would go with Peraza to start the season at shortstop. I think Volpe, just from watching him, and I've said this multiple times, has a body that reminds me of Dustin Pedroia, of Brett Boone, Aaron Boone's brother, even of Alex Bregman, who plays third base. But I think he profiles more as a second baseman than as a shortstop. He does have a quick release also, but from what I've seen from Peraza and Volpe, Peraza's arm is better, and I want the better arm at shortstop. Now, the Yankees didn't really give Peraza a type of playing time that I thought they were going to when they called him up. He ended up sitting the bench a lot down the stretch. It was something that angered the fan base. It was something that angered me. It was something that definitely had to affect Peraza's confidence a little bit. You know, why are they calling me up just to sit me? I feel like he could have gotten some valuable experience, and then maybe he wouldn't have been thrown out there to sink or swim in the ALCS as he was. You know, wasn't on the first round of the playoff roster. I just feel like they treated Peraza very poorly. And, you know, I hope that they treat Volpe with a little bit more, I don't know, just respect for his development, you know? I see putting these guys on equal footing going into next season and letting them battle it out. But in my opinion, you know, Peraza made it first, and I think he should be kind of favored as the go-to guy. You know, the job should be his to lose. But if Volpe comes out and wins it, good for Volpe. But I still think Volpe is going to factor in at the major league level, maybe not right out of the gate on opening day, but within the first month of the season, maybe after they stretch past his service time, issues. So keep an eye on that. There was a lot of talk about Correa this winter. Hopefully the issues with his ankle and his physicals and all the various contracts that have fallen through with him sort of put Yankees fans off of that, because I don't think Correa is coming to the Yankees. I never did. And left field remains an interesting situation. There had been a lot of rumors about Brian Reynolds, and some of them more credible. We'd heard it talked about on a lot of the major sports shows and written about by a number of prominent reporters, but it still has not gone through. The asking price for Reynolds appears to be too high. They are asking for the world, and I don't blame him. I mean, he's a good player. He's a switch hitter. He would add a lot of value. But it sounds like the Yankees are gearing up, at least publicly, to go forward with Aaron Hicks. And if they do choose to go forward with Aaron Hicks, I would look for either a mid-season trade for somebody who's going to be a free agent after the season, you know, kind of like a trade deadline move, or, you know, the Yankees trying to push Jason Dominguez or Everson Pereira along. Now, you know, we just talked about Peraza and Volpe. Would the Yankees go with a third of their lineup being kids? I don't know. That seems kind of suspect to me. It's not necessarily something that I'd be opposed to doing, to rushing these guys a little bit, you know, especially since you've shored up the rotation. The bullpen is looking pretty good. You could still use one more arm. I still think Andrew Chafin is a good fit. But I'm not opposed to going with some young guys and pushing them and testing their boundaries rather than, you know, just kind of sitting back and seeing what you can get from Aaron Hicks, who, you know, looked done to me last season. I really don't think that Aaron Hicks is going to be the Yankees starting left fielder come opening day. That's just my hunch. Now, it is getting kind of late in the winter. We're getting ready to turn into the 2023 season. Teams are going to want to start solidifying their rosters over the next couple of weeks because you're really only about 6 weeks or so from pitchers and catchers beginning to show up. And at that point, most of the heavy lifting, as Brian Cashman likes to call it, is done. It's finished. And so right now is the point where you're putting your final touches on the roster and beginning to gear up for camp. So if something happens with, let's say, Brian Reynolds or another outfield position, I would expect it to happen over the next couple of weeks. You don't want to get too deep into January. You know, January 15th or so, the Yankees will probably be done with their starting lineup. They might still consider adding a bullpen piece or some depth pieces like we saw with the Luetge trade. But I would think that over the next couple of weeks, they're going to round their roster into form. Now, whenever that does happen, I'll begin doing my season previews like I always do in February. I do have some good news coming up. I am going to be expanding with a couple of additional shows this year. Now, we do the nightly post-game recap show. I'm bringing that back this year, and this year I'm going to try and do every game except for the West Coast. I'm going to do pre-game shows for the West Coast. I've also got a couple of other additions. One, I'm going to be doing a Friday night recap show where we go over the previous week's storylines, and that's going to feature two podcasters. I'm bringing in Pete from NYY News TV and Frankie Baseball, whom you know from the chat. He's my stat guy, he's my highlight guy, and he's funny. So, you know, people like it when Pete and I work together. You know, I have access to all the analytics behind the scenes, and I can see the watch length for how long people watch specific videos. And I find that when Pete and I work together, and this is mostly because Pete can go off on little rants here and there that I enjoy, but when we work together, people tend to watch longer. So I'm bringing him in to do a Friday show, and I'm going to be joining his channel, NYY News TV, on Sundays as the second half of his podcast, Designated Spitters. So we're going to have kind of like a weekly kickoff and a weekly wrap-up on each other's channels, just to do a little bit of cross-promotion and, you know, create some engaging content, hopefully. And I'm really excited for you guys to get more of Frankie Baseball, because Frankie makes me laugh like very few commenters on this channel. And I'm looking for more people, too. I'm also planning on doing a regular show with Jason of 161 River Avenue, though we haven't determined exactly what that's going to be. Something that we're going to do a couple of times a month, probably. And I'm working on getting some more creators involved. I've got some more documentary-style videos that I've begun working on that hopefully will get released. We'll see. A lot of the stuff that I create ends up on the cutting room floor. You know, if I just don't like it, if I don't feel like it's worthy of putting out, then it never goes out. And I treat it as practice, right? I mean, as training for myself. So, you know, as always, this channel is focused on creating high-quality content, and I'm planning on doing a lot more long-form content in 2023. So I appreciate everybody who has been a part of this channel from the beginning. We are over 30,000 subscribers now, 30,512 as of this morning. Goal is to get to, you know, 40 or 50,000 this season. I am looking for, you know, potential internship for someone who can do social media for me, who can take clips of the podcast, who can do like lineups and box scores and things like that on Instagram and so forth. So if that interests you, feel free to reach out to me. It is a paid position, but it's not a ton of money, you know, so be reasonable. Looking for maybe a high school student or a college student who wants to make, you know, a little bit of extra cash. So stay tuned for all that. Hopefully we got some news breaking soon, and I will see you when I see you. Stay away from that clickbait.